Welcome, everyone. What a great day it is to be a Kansan. The last time we were live in this building, it rained, so it can only do that once, and we're past that. So if you didn't bring your umbrella, I think we'll be okay. Hopefully we don't get rain. Anyway, welcome, everyone. Welcome here, and especially welcome to the students that are here today. We have a few people in the audience that have traveled to come here to be part of this special day. And retired, we've got Mally Sisson, who was retired from being here for many years and did much of the food work that was so special to Grace, even though she didn't work directly with Grace. She and Grace had some of the same characteristics, and we've appreciated her over the years. We have a retired faculty member, Shell Johnson is here, and I think she was going to be, maybe she's not in here yet, but she was supposed to have been here, and maybe yet. We have some dietitians that have returned to here for today. Patty Dollarhide is here. Patty is just finishing up your president of the Kansas Dietetic Association meeting and stint, and also the meeting that just was last week. Carol Gilmore is here. Carol's been a friend and a supporter and a great person for a number of years, and we're glad to see Carol Gilmore here. Amber Howells is here, and I know many of the students that are here have worked with Amber. Amber was a great supporter of all of the coordinated program initiatives that have been going on for the last many years, and she is now in private practice here in Manhattan, but is here, and we thank her for coming. One special person that's here that I hadn't met until today is Beth Panbecker. And where is Pam? There she is. She happened to be an advisee of Grace Schugart. So we're going to have to catch up and hear some of the stories that you have. So and she just moved back to town. So we're happy to have you here as well. Thank you. We have a couple faculty members that would have been here that have both passed away this year, and you all may not know, so I'll just say Faith Roach and John Pence. And neither of those two are here, but they're probably watching down today. We have a few other guests. One very special is Grace's grandson and his wife, Jeff and Joanne Shugart. We also have Dean Craig Harms, the interim dean in the College of I always want to say human ecology, but it's not that. The College of Health, College of Health and Human Sciences. I've been through about 4 college names since I've been here. Health and Human Sciences. Thank you, Dean Harms, for coming today. Appreciate it. A little about Grace. The lecture series was established in 1975 to honor Grace, former head of the department in our college, and she also went through many department names during her tenure that was here. During her career, she was instrumental in helping shape our profession and for management in dietetic education. And I don't say that lightly. She had her finger in the management education for people all over the United States and beyond, and was just a real leader in that area. She really, truly did help shape the management teaching throughout the United States and abroad. In 1968 and 69, she served as the president of the American Dietetic Association, now the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. She was a medallion winner and also a Marjorie Holsizer Kofer Award winner for the Academy. And both both of them were some of the highest honors. The Marjorie Holsizer Kofer Award was the highest honor that they give in the Academy. So she was recognized through the Academy for her great achievements. Mrs. Shugart's tenure as a department head positioned us, as I said, to be leaders in preparing students to be practitioners in management education and also food service management in the state of Kansas and beyond. She was a teacher, she was a mentor, she was a writer, did all of those things, and was so skilled at anything she did in all 3 of those arenas. She worked with Virginia Harger on a management text that's still published today. She also worked with Bessie Brooks West, and who was West Hall's named after. Bessie Brooks was in our college and worked with her for a number of years with Food for 50. And I had the opportunity and the luck to be able to work with Grace on that text as well. So those texts are both still in print. Food for 50, I believe, is the oldest text at Kansas State University in continuous publication, and that certainly is a credit to Grace. What is most remembered about Grace is her kindness towards students and faculty, and her never-ending support for them. She was a servant leader long before the term was even coined, servant leader. She put the needs of others first. She helped both students and faculty develop and perform at their highest level, and enjoyed every minute of it. And a side note to students, when I first met Grace, I was in awe that I was meeting a past president of the Academy. When I was in college, we had to do a research project and looked at different people that was in the Academy and et cetera, et cetera. And I was in Nebraska, so I knew Grace was Kansas, kind of nearby, and did some research on some of the things that Grace had said and done and read. And then I got to come here and meet Grace, and I was in awe of being able to meet someone that had been an Academy president. Because most dietitians go through their career without meeting a president of the Academy. And now, 55 years later, you students here have the privilege of not only meeting a past president of the Academy, but having had the opportunity to learn from the past president of the Academy, Dr. Kevin Sauer. And for those of you that have had a class with him already, you know, some of the freshmen and sophomores that might be in this room, you're up for a great surprise in the best kind of way to be able to work with Kevin. So get to know him. In 50 years, you can stand up here and say, I knew that guy. So please know that you have a special opportunity, more than anybody ever has, to meet and to know and to learn from a president of the Academy. The Shugart Lecture series was born out of Grace's desire for students to meet and learn from some of the most renowned professionals in the field and talk about the topics that really impact the dietetic profession. This lecture series is truly a manifestation of her dream, and we're so pleased that we can continue this lecture series, and it's since 1975. Dr. Carol Shanklin, retired emeritus and dean of the graduate school, is going to introduce our speakers.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon to introduce our speaker and the panelists. We will begin with the speaker, and then we will follow it with the panelists, but I'm going to introduce all three of them at this time. I'm very excited to be able to introduce Susan in particular, Dr. Susan Finn, but Sue and I, because that's what I'll refer to her as Sue, that's how we knew each other when we served on the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics together. So when I was preparing this, I told Susan at lunch, I can't call you Susan, I'll call you Sue. And she said, of course, that's what you should. So again, we'll begin with, we're really excited to, have all of you here. This is an exciting opportunity for all of us to take time to listen to leaders in our field, but more importantly, during the panel things, please ask questions and interact both before and after the session, because this is what Grace really wanted you to do, is get to know the speakers, learn from them and each other. So take advantage of that opportunity. Today, we're excited to welcome Dr. Susan Sue Finn, who will present Nutrition Authority Perspectives on Opportunity. Susan is a CEO of global consultancy Finn and Associate. She is a recognized leader and respected communicator in food, nutrition, and health arenas. As a top-level advisor to professional societies, educational institutions, and the industry, Sue evaluates, interprets, and brings context implications. In 2014, then Speaker of the House, Joe Bonner, appointed Sue to the National Commission on Hunger, which assessed the hunger crisis in this country and recommended how the government, in collaboration with private and public partners could best respond to how to address hunger in the U.S. And it's continually crisis today that we as nutrition professionals need to be involved in trying to address. Over the past several years, she has focused on strengthening the authority of the registered dietitian as the profession moves into its second century. She effectively communicates food and nutrition science and explores the intersect between food, nutrition, agriculture, and sustainability. Sue also serves on the board of the Royal Academy of Science International Trust and recently participated in the Trust inaugural World Women Health and Development Forum at the United Nations. As a result of this initiative, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a groundbreaking resolution to establish an annual International Day of Women and Girls in Science. As a past president, so we got two past presidents in the room today, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and past chair of the Academy Foundation, Sue remains deeply involved in championing dietetic professionals as the nutrition authorities. As co-chair of the Academy's Second Century Initiative, she is intimately involved in shaping the organization's future direction. Like others have been mentioned, she received high honors from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, including the Medallion Award. She's presented the prestigious Lena Francis Cooper Lecture and received the Marjorie Huffsizer Kofer Award, which again, as Mary mentioned, is the highest honor bestowed. The students are saying, well, where did she get educated? You didn't mention that. Sue obtained her bachelor's degree in education from Bowling Green State University in Ohio. Then she went on to complete her master's of science degree in public health nutrition at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and finally her PhD in nutrition science at the Ohio State University. Let's welcome Susan. And Susan, hold it just a second. Just let them welcome you, and then we'll introduce the other panelists joining you, okay? That's okay. Joining on the panel this afternoon is Dr. Andy Lee Gonzalez. Andy is a registered dietitian with nearly 15 years of nutrition and public health experience. Her focus has been on pediatric and community nutrition. Andy earned her bachelor's degree in dietetics and nutrition and completed her internship training from the Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan. She also has a master's degree in public health from Michigan State from the College of Human Medicine with a concentration in nutrition and migrant farm workers health. She then completed her doctorate at Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio and a certificate in business analytics from Michigan State University. She hasn't got enough education yet. She's a lifelong learner and is currently pursuing an MBA at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Andy currently serves as the U.S. Pediatric Medical Science Liaison for Abbott Nutrition. Prior to joining Abbott Nutrition, Andy was the corporate retail registered dietitian and sales marketing spokesperson for H-E-B Nutrition Services, a large grocer in Texas, which is her home state is Texas. Her focus on pediatric and adult education, customer relations, and provider of marketing in South Texas. She also has experience in community nutrition, where she taught as adjunct professor and preceptor at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley in Edinburgh, Texas, and South Texas College in McAllen. And his research interests include childhood obesity, maternal health, leadership, and a focus on Hispanic and Latino health. She mentioned at lunch today that she also does a lot of education for medical professionals in pediatric nutrition. Our third panelist this afternoon is Mary Canee, a senior in dietetics in our coordinating program, who is excited that she'll be completing her supervised practice this summer and will then begin pursuing what is her opportunities in dietetics. Mary spends a lot of her time working on the betterment of her sorority Alpha Omega Epsilon as the acting formal and academic chairs and is a dietitian's assistant at Hy-Vee. While she's not sure exactly where her career in dietetics will lead her, she's fascinated by industrial engineering design and ergonomics, as well as all things autoimmune disease and cardiology. She is very passionate about all aspects of dietetics and strives to help show the world the versatility of dietitians and how vital we are to the betterment of society. So let's both welcome our panelists, and then Sue can come on up.
Well, I can tell you, Carol, thank you. We've gotten rid of the formalities of the doctor this, doctor that, because these are all friends, and I'm seeing other friends around, and how wonderful that is. Well, it is a great honor for me to be here. When Mary, Dr. Molt, and Kevin, Dr. Sauer, asked me to give this lecture, I was deeply honored. I unfortunately did not know Dr. Schugart, but I read her bio, and I was incredibly humbled by the fact that I would be giving a lecture that she supported and initiated. You know, I looked at that and I thought, what a visionary. It was 1968 when she was president. I'm glad I didn't know that then, because the students that I spoke to today, that's the year I arrived at the ADA meeting, hitchhiking with a friend on the front end of a semi-truck. So I am very glad I did not know that she was so distinguished at that time. But what a visionary, and she helped really shape the profession. I looked at what she'd done with credentialing and how she helped move that forward. Policy, she began to move that forward for us too. And she certainly brought food and management and business forward for the profession. We were very fortunate to have her leadership. Bear with me, I have a cold. You know, throughout my career, I have been very privileged to work with outstanding professionals in many areas of food and nutrition practice. And honestly, I've been taught, I believe, by some of the very best of them. They weren't all Buckeyes. They weren't all from Ohio State. But I have really listened to them. I've observed them. I've received a lot of advice if they worked in business or healthcare, or if they worked in academia. They gave me advice very freely, and I certainly got a lot of advice from my friends in the academy. And I really did see firsthand what it meant to be a knowledgeable, trusted, and respected voice. And so I wrote this book, Nutrition Authority, Perspectives in Practice, an opportunity to give you my views, to kind of share my story of the excitement that I have for us as dietetic professionals. The world is open. We have phenomenal opportunities. And I hope it inspires you as students to seek the challenges and the opportunities that lay in front of us, and that you join forces with others to help position dietetic professionals in the vanguard of health and wellness. I hope it inspires you, gives you one little glimpse. Gee, that really gets me excited. Because the future is so bright, and it could not be more important now that we really move forward and travel this road together. Absolutely essential. The time is right. Now, when you look at this little book, you say, well, what did it take you, a week to write that, 2 days? It's a little book. Ever been told to write an elevator speech or a talk? It's very hard to write something concise. And I had many, 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 many more pages. And the Academy began to kind of pare it down because they knew, like I knew, you would never read that. So I kind of modeled it after a book that maybe some of you that are a little older than students in here might remember, The 1 Minute Manager. It was Kenneth Blanchard and Spencer Johnson's 112-page book called The 1 Minute Manager. Now, it was a bestseller. We all read it. Now, if you don't remember that, maybe you're a golfer or you have a family member that's a golfer, and on that bookshelf is quite likely Harvey Pinnick's little red book, Lessons and Teachings from a Lifetime of Golf. That's kind of what my book is. It's kind of a concise view, about 148 pages, of what I think can move us forward as a nutrition authority today. And you'll notice as you read this that I interviewed lots of different people. Andy was one of the people I interviewed. And I got very excited because they were so optimistic. They said, you can do anything you want to do, but you're going to have to take the initiatives. You're going to have to carve it out. So in framing my thoughts for this book, I thought, how am I going to do this concisely? So I decided, past, present, future. That's pretty simple. That'll all line up. Then when I got to writing, I realized it wasn't quite so simple because I didn't know where to put a point. It might be in the past, but it was also in the future, and it was in the present too. So I realized the past, present, and future were all intertwined. And it needed us to look at all of the whole big package to look at our nutrition authority. You can't separate it out. So let me begin with the first pillar, and I call them pillars, and it's history. Why begin with history, and why is it important for our future and what we do now? Well, some people question, why are you going to look back when you're looking forward? I would advise you to look at one of the award-winning documentaries done by Ken Burns. You know, he's done 40-some of them. And it was, whether it was about baseball or the Vietnam War or the Mayo Clinic or national parks or country music, his words resonate, because here's what he says. Why would we study the past if not to have exemplars for the present that could guide us into the future? Past, present, and future. We have a strong legacy in our profession, and we have moved mountains. We have moved many, many, many areas. We touch many new areas that I know that our foremothers, we should say, would never believe it. We're doing lots of different things. But what came before us, our history, has application to our future and how successful we're going to be. So pillar number one is history. And I thought Mark Twain said it best when he says, you know, history doesn't often repeat itself, but it sure rhymes. And it is that rhyming we're looking at. To help make it relevant to you, I opened this section of this book with an interview from a woman who's at Michigan State University. Andy did not know her. Her name was Helen Zoe Veit, and she's professor at history at Michigan State University. For her doctoral dissertation at Yale, she decided to focus on the historic role of food and nutrition practices. And by the way, she wrote 4 outstanding small books based on her dissertation research. Excellent. And I interviewed her, and here's what she said. She said, history is more than dates and events. Studying history opens our minds to different views and how we interpret the world around us. It teaches us you're a part of a larger world. It helps us understand why we have certain beliefs and what were the forces at work at the time they helped shape the events. Big picture. So I said to Dr. Veit, what do you teach students in your classes that aren't history majors? She said, I teach a big history because you know why? It shapes careers. She says it connects dots, it shows patterns, and identifies why certain behaviors are seen. She says this way, history requires a deep dive of what's going on in society at the time and determines what we can learn about today's challenges. I'm going to give you an example where history, I think, teaches us something. A good example is the passing of the 19th Amendment securing women's right to vote, which occurred in 1920. It took 71 years to pass that amendment. 71 years. My husband and I were taking a wonderful road trip up to upstate New York from Columbus. And we got off the thruway at the Seneca Falls exit, because that's where the Women's Rights National Historic Park exhibited. So I said, let's go in and look at this. And it was shocking. We went into the museum. The first convention to begin to put forth that 19th Amendment was in 1848. And it was by a woman, Lucretia Motts, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and others. They held the first convention in 1848. And if you think about it, you think about the suffragettes movement. We think about Susan B. Anthony because her picture's on everything. She also traveled the country and lived in flea bag hotels and did many things that was very hard to do, but she was one tough lady. And she never lived long enough to cast a vote in the national election. So I thought to myself, wow, these reformers were something else. 71 years, and they did not give up, and they were relentless. They were not going to give up. They were passionate, they persevered, they had a united platform and a united voice, and they picked the right timing. It was right after World War I. They were absolutely focused. What does that say to us? Well, I think we have an example right in front of us, and that directly relates to how do we get paid for what we do? Year after year, and I know all of you are involved, I'm seeing Dr. Sauer smile back there. What's the biggest issue that when we survey dietitians? We want reimbursement for our services, and not an unusual request. The Medicare, go look back in history, it was 1965 when the Medicare rulings came out, and we weren't included. And over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we worked hard on it. And I know our honor of Dr. Schugart was very involved in that. And when they were very involved after it didn't include us to try to get us included. One was to get data, two was to get connections, and three was establish a Washington office, and they did all that. We got a breakthrough, and some of you may remember this. It was the 1990s. We had the Medical Nutrition Therapy Act passed, which permitted reimbursement for certain things, like renal disease. That was all good. We had nephrologists come and help us pass that. We had a great program to get moving. We had the right contacts. We had the right lobbying firm. Bill Clinton had just come to office, so we hired his former chief of staff, and she got us right in. And that's how we got that passed, and she guided us about how to do that. So it moved forward for selected diseases, but we wanted more. And that's where we are now. I hope it doesn't take us 40 more years, but we've been at this a long time, and we need to stick to it. We need to make sure that we have the data, and we have great success. We have really some open doors. We have some smart people working on this, and we got some great data by the association. So we need to move forward. And what do we need? We need passion. We need perseverance. We need those same things that those early reformers. Absolutely vigilant and not give up. That's how you're going to get this through. And that's what we need. As a sidebar, the association has what we call affinity groups. And I'd like to ask all of you to join the reimbursement affinity group, because that is a group and an organized group that focuses on specific topics. There's no charge to it. You just join up and you'll get notice of the meetings that are held on Zoom. It'll give you the messages, it'll give you the platform, it will give you kind of where things are, and it will talk to you about your role in making sure we do everything we can to help reimbursement and services move forward. And we need to help the Academy be successful, because when the Academy is successful, we're successful. And when we're successful, the Academy is successful. It's joint effort. You can't do it without both. And so we need each and every one of you to really be a very strong advocate for reimbursement and bring all your support. So history. History teaches us. It emphasizes the need to look big, look broadly at what's really happening, what's important in society. Look at how people think of things differently, just not how we do, but look how different views are held. Look at the challenges that are big here in society today. And know it takes passion, perseverance, a united voice, and moving forward at the right time and the right times now, just like our early reformers did. That's what history teaches us. We have great learnings from them. Pillar number 2, where are we presently? Well, I could probably get a lot of different answers to that. But when you're asked about about your profession, have you ever heard it said, or maybe have you said, we're a science-based profession? What's that mean? I got to think, what's it mean when you say that? Is it meaningful to the patients I counsel that I'm a science-based profession? Government policies, are they going to make sure we're included in the next bill? What about reporters? Are they going to cover the story because we're a science-based profession? Today, I fear it's not as convincing in and of itself. We have to do more. What does it mean when you say follow the science? Whose science? And how am I going to integrate this science in what I'm teaching people? We need more. To be believed and trusted as a science-based professional in any of the science fields, I think you have to go to the root of what makes an authority. And of course, I went to Google. And there are two things that make an authority, according to Google. One is you got to know something. It's knowledge. They say this is an academic qualification gained through facts and understanding. The understanding and information that are acquired through rigorous education and experimental process. That's what you all are doing here as students. And that's what you will continue to do all your life as part of lifelong learning. It's constantly learning new things. And it is earned. It is earned. Those CEUs you get are earned. That's a very important part of our requirement to be an authority. And we score pretty high, I think, in that category. But equally important to be an authority is what Google calls a moral authority. And that's to be trusted, to be reliable, to be credible, and to be inspirational. That is also earned. It's earned by what you say and how you say it and how you act. Both are key to being a nutrition authority. You gotta know something and you gotta be credible. Not as easy as it sounds. But fortunately, the Academy has lots of tools to help us be credible and to be knowledgeable and to demonstrate our grasp of knowledge and evidence. And I am sure you have worked with many of these tools, our EAL, our practice guidelines, our best practices, a grading system, a validated grading system. The DPGs have advice, and now, of course, we have the affinity groups that give you constant information on what to focus on and the latest research in an area. I interviewed a lot of people, a number of people that were using these tools, but I interviewed some people that were involved in the very basic development of them. And I was fascinated with their commitment and what they did to develop some of these tools. They're pretty sophisticated, and a lot's going into really helping us communicate science. I interviewed a lot of dietitians as researchers, and we need more publications from dietitians. We need more good researchers. And I talked to Linda Schnitzler, and you all know her because she's the editor of our journal. And she says, I focus my efforts now on first-time authors. I want them to have a really good, positive experience when they submit an article for publication. She says, the board, the editorial board, and I work very hard to make sure it's a good experience. Even if we turn it down, we want them to learn something from that experience. And of course, we have Dr. Allison Stiver, who heads our research team, and she is doing a gangbuster job. She is doing a fabulous job of running trials all over the world and developing databases that are going to be extremely important as we move forward for reimbursement and payment for our services. So pay attention to that. Get research and pay attention to what we're doing. I think we have the tools to be nutrition authorities, but we have to show other people we know something. I believe we have to demonstrate to others our depth of knowledge and understanding of any article or any study that we're quoting, particularly that we're referencing. This means you have to do all the things you were taught here at K-State. You have to analyze the data. You have to look at the study design. You have to look at the results and interpretation results. And when you find somebody speaking about what you think is right, and they think something different, have a discussion with them. Discuss that. Or if you're in a more formal meeting, have a civil debate with them. Because people need to hear your voice, because that shows the strength of your voice as a nutrition authority. Speak up in a very constructive way. Not easy, because today people want quick answers. I am very fond of the work and writings that the late Charles Krauthammer wrote. He was a psychiatrist, neuroscientist, and a phenomenal editor and writer. He did a whole series of articles, then eventually published in the Washington Post, on science. He says this: there is nothing more anti-scientific than the very idea that science is settled and static and impervious to change. It's always going to change. And that's why I love what Ken Lee said. Ken Lee is a very good friend of mine. He's at The Ohio State University in the Ag School, and he's a food scientist. And he says, Susan, All we have to tell people is research is a discovery process. When we know more, we'll tell them. They don't need to know any more than that. So, okay, Ken, that's one way of looking at it. He was kidding, of course. But we have to be strong communicators of nutrition research. We have to be seen, because there's so many voices. There's so many headlines of the day. All of it is seemingly controversial, and so we have to keep up on those trends, and we have to speak out as really credible, good science communicators. I have a very soft spot on my heart for the method that the late Bernadine Healy used when she communicated information. You may not know her. She was now the only woman that's been head of our NIH in the government. When she was there, she happens to be a cardiologist. When she was at the NIH, she also started the Women's Health Initiative among people did not want her to do that, but she pursued on. She was also then came as Dean of Medicine at The Ohio State University. It was fabulous. And then she went on and was head of the Red Cross and passed away way too young. But she had a marvelous way of communicating, and she was the CBS medical correspondent, and when she was at Ohio State, they built a communication studio for her. And she always said this, and I knew her really well, and I don't care whether she was writing or speaking or talking on television, she used the same technique, and maybe it'll be helpful to you. She says, she always started out, she says, make it easy for people. Here's what we know about keto diet. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. All the things we don't know about. Is it good or bad, or what are the complications from it? But here's what I would do. She would do that in every single situation. She'd boil it down to here's what we know, here's what we don't know, and that gave her a chance to change as research came forward. But here's what I would do, credibility. And she had a wonderful, wonderful way of doing it, and perhaps that can be helpful to you. Sometimes when I'm kerfuffled by something, I go back to her basics. So pillar number 2. What can you do to demonstrate your authority as a profession? Know your facts, totally understand it, evaluate the results of what you're saying and your research, and discuss or debate those findings if there's a different view, and focus on communicating your views simply and credibly. That's pillar number 2. My third pillar is our future. Now, you all expect me to tell you exactly where your future is going to be. Right. I'm sure you're all thinking about your future, especially if you're seniors and even if you're juniors or just starting out. You're all thinking about, what am I going to do? Where am I going to be? Some of you have already decided, I understand. And you're going to hear from our panel members about their thoughts. Andy's going to talk about her experiences, and Mary's going to talk about hers as she begins to think. We've got kind of an intergenerational panel, if you'll be old, not old, and young. That's what we are. But when I got to this section, I thought, oh boy, how am I going to do this? So I interviewed a lot of people. I interviewed a woman that we've had on one of our panels before, who was with the Food Council in Detroit. Prior to the Food Council, she wasn't even a dietitian. She was a technical administrator for Ford Motor Company. And she got so interested personally in dietetics that she moved into the field. Now she heads a Food Council in downtown Detroit. Phenomenal. I interviewed a woman with Google who plans meals for 52 countries. And she talked about her challenges of what she does, because Google provided meals across the board in every country where they operate. I talked to heads of association, particularly those in associations related to our profession, ag consultants, sustainability experts, educators, retail experts, pharma experts, and I tried to get a picture of what they thought. Well, I didn't want to get off my Zoom calls because they were so exciting to hear them, and it became clear to me we got a lot of choices. That's the problem. We got a lot of choices. But it's up to you to pick the path. So how do we do that? Well, here's my suggestion to you. I'd go back and get the proceedings from the Academy's Summit that was done right at the turn of our 100th anniversary, where we brought together about 125, correct me, Kevin, if I'm wrong, about 125 leading experts from around the world. And we asked them that, what's the future? Those proceedings are available, they're online. You get it by foundation@eatright.org, you can pick them up. And I would do that, because in there, there's a lot of opportunities for you to look at. Kind of lays out the landscape for you. But I picked two. I picked food systems, and I picked technology, because there's a lot of the suggestions came in those two buckets, if you will. When you get to food systems, one of my friends said it best. He says, you know, Susan, you look at where dietitians are. How are we doing at time there? Okay, just I'm winding up. Okay, Andy's giving me one. She's just looking at her watch. She said, here's what we are. We've got, on one end, our traditional roles. On our other end, we've got food, where food's grown, where it's processed, where it's distributed, where it's marketed, where it's sold. Not that this on the right side is traditional. Your roles may not be traditional at all in traditional dietetic programs, like in congregate meals and school food service, in hospitals, nursing homes, and long-term care, may not be all traditional, but they kind of are traditional settings. We have opportunities in all those areas that are very different from what they were in the past. What I would advise all young people to do is get a hold of those proceedings and map it out. Take a look at all of those. Map out your own graph. What is it that you would like to do? What really excites you? And with that, what I would do would be delve down a little bit deeper in each of those that you think you're interested in. Talk to people in those fields. Go volunteer in something that associates you with those areas, and dig a little deeper and see if there's opportunities. There may be opportunities for volunteer, there may be for paid jobs, there may be for internship, and you'll begin to see if that resonates at all with you. It may or may not. Then you move on to the next. But that's the way you get channels that are kind of open to you. Get engaged in it. Investigate for yourself. That's what we mean by we say you have to create it yourself. You kind of do. So there's very exciting here about where those opportunities are. Technology. Is anybody concerned about technology? We have fear and excitement both. There's lots of discussions about it everywhere. Everywhere I turn around, there's articles written. Wall Street Journal daily has articles on AI. We're already there. We've got Siri and Alexa. We've got hospitals and healthcare that are using technology. I was very interested in what some of the food companies are doing with food. They're using sensors for their early evaluation of how a food might taste or smell. So it's already here. We know that. And there is a big discussion about let's put a pause on it. I think it's going to be hard to put a pause on it, but nevertheless, we have to get involved because AI is one of those things that everybody is very aware of. In fact, there was an article a couple weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal that was quoting a study that was done at the University of Pennsylvania. And they did it with OpenAI, which of course owns ChatGPT. And they said our jobs are dramatically going to change, especially in the next few years. They said 80% of workers today are in occupations where at least one of those functions of that job are going to change. The catch is our jobs are going to change too. There's no question. The question is where and how. They said AI does not affect short order cooks or motorcycle repair people. So maybe if you don't want to see technology, maybe those would be choices. Just kidding. There appears to be a large range of emotions. So what do? How do we focus on it? Well, you can't live in the future until it's here. You can't work in it until it's here. So you begin to study it. You begin to look at it, research it, find out what's going on. Talk to people, talk to your friends and colleagues. We had that discussion last night at dinner. We discussed what's happening with AI, and we had lots of views. Continue that discussion. Have conversations with people that are in technology in your places of employment. Talk to these people. They have a pretty good idea what's going on. Ask them, and go to like-minded organizations. Like if you're a dietitian and working in hospitals, go to OTs and PTs. Find out whether other people what they're doing with these functions, and how they're approaching it. You will learn something, and you will find out what is happening in the field. I am very optimistic that we're going to find opportunities. Yes, there'll be some things that have changed and already have changed. I'm sure you're going to see them as you go out. But I am very optimistic we'll find ways to improve our value and to continue to show our value. But if we get prepared is the question, if we get prepared. So I am very optimistic. I am very optimistic of who we are and where we're going. I think we've had great leaders, and I am very optimistic about our future. I think we have to look to lessons of the past. I think we have to look at our challenges that go to opportunities currently. Everything has an opportunity. And I think we have to look at the future. Those are my views, and it's a bit of what I might call my story. There was an editor, a former editor of Harvard Business Review, Jane Hertzfeld. She says, and she was editor, she used to write stories all the time on people's careers, and she said, bullet points of our careers can be turned in compelling stories. And I add, they can solve problems and shape our future. I think they're a very good way to begin to help people understand what those opportunities are by where they have been. And we have two individuals, Andy and Mary, that are going to share a little bit of their experiences doing just that. So Andy and Mary, come forward. Okay, we're going to start out with some, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to come over here and ask the questions. All right. As I said, we're intergenerational. Can't you see it? I'm going to ask each of you to talk about your background and how you got into dietetics. I think we heard where Andy has been. I want to ask her a couple questions about that, but talk a little bit about what got you into dietetics. And then, Mary, I'd like to ask you the same thing. How did you get into dietetics?
Thank you so much, Dr. Finn. So as mentioned, I attended Michigan State University, but before that, some of you might be asking, how did you move from Texas all the way to Michigan? So I had the privilege of actually being recruited through the College Assistant Migrant Program. It's called CAMP. That is a supportive program that allows students of migrant farm worker backgrounds. So my family actually used to migrate to northern Texas to pick watermelon. And so they recruited me and my twin sister to attend Michigan State. For those of you that maybe have visited Texas, I actually had already signed for UT Austin. I was like, I'm going to be a Longhorn. But unfortunately, I come from a very traditional Hispanic Latino background, and my parents thought that they would be, they would hold us back by saying, well, Angie, you can't leave it unless Andy wants to go with you, because they knew how bad I wanted to be a Longhorn. Well, my heart is with my twin. So the story ended there. So we packed our belongings and we actually went to Michigan State. I did receive my Bachelor's of Science in dietetics. And so the question always lies, why dietetics, why nutrition? Well, I always knew I loved science. I loved biology, even through high school. That was an area that I was very much interested in. But I would say that, I've had various people in my life that have been very influential of where I'm at today. And I had Dr. Wong Song, a mentor at Michigan State University, that I took a community nutrition class, and I was like, I really love this. I really love how nutrition can help people. I love the science. And, and I decided to do dietetics. And so as far as my kind of career path with dietetics, I did receive a master's in public health. So I did that before my internship, and then I got my PhD in organizational leadership. So very unique kind of pathway to dietetics. And I know I mentioned it this morning, but I want to reiterate to the students that there is more than one path to dietetics. And I'll say that again, there is more than one path to dietetics. The field of dietetics is so dynamic now, it's ever changing, and Dr. Finn talked a little bit about that, but through that journey, I was able to tackle different areas of dietetics, which I'm very proud of. My journey still is not over. I'm highly involved with the academy, the past chair of the Latinos and Hispanics in Dietetics and Nutrition, or LAHIDAN, and part of the Pediatric Nutrition Practice Group as well. And again, and with the Texas affiliate as well. And so, that has been my journey as far as, my kind of journey to dietetics. And again, it's not over, but I'm just really happy to be here with you all today and share a little bit about my story.
Wonderful. All why did you pick dietetics? Tell us about your background and how you arrived at this wonderful major.
Thank you, Dr. Finn. So initially, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life at all. I think I hold the record of changing my major. I think it's like 7 times. I went from mass media, journalism, and communications all the way to chemistry and pre-dental, and then somehow ended up taking a food science course and ended up falling in love with food and just didn't feel like it was as complete as I wanted it to be because I did still have some interest in science. So then I started researching nutrition and didn't even know what a dietitian really was. And it was just a foreign word to me. Then once I did some more digging, realized it was just the most balanced thing I could have found, and ended up just on a whim emailing the advisor and switching in one summer. Didn't even really have to think about it, and I think best decision I ever made. So.
Wonderful. Good for the profession. Are you, where did you come from? Where's home?
Home, I was born in Iran, but I've lived in Overland Park for the past 10 years. So.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Again, another example, digging and finding out the opportunities, and both of them created those, finding that profession. I want to talk a little bit about the job, and a specific job, Andy, and then I want to talk a little bit about what you loved about your best nutrition courses, or food courses. So let's talk a little bit. When I interviewed Andy, she was not with Abbott Nutrition. Well, remember, I spent 30 years at Abbott Nutrition, so believe me, I said, what do you mean she's at Abbott Nutrition? Because when I interviewed, she was in retail. Mm-hmm. So talk about what I was so impressed with, what she went through to get this job in retail. It's just a little bit of example of the kind of detail that you have to do to prepare for a job.
Yes, most definitely. And it's definitely something that I was very proud of and continue to be proud of being part of. So at the time, I actually was living in Michigan. For those of you that are familiar with Michigan, I was working in Charlotte, a very remote area, in a community hospital doing food service, also inpatient, and some community work as well. But I found out that H-E-B, a large grocer in Texas, was actually starting up a nutrition program. So those of you that are from the area are probably familiar, and I know that Mary talked about it, very similar to Hy-Vee. And so I applied, it was like an online application. I applied. What I didn't realize was the rigorous process of through the interview. It took me 6 months of various steps or stages of the interview. So first, obviously, just a quick application. You submit that. But a month later, I got another kind of a call from the recruiter, had a call with the recruiter, kind of like formalized. Then I had another call a month later with some additional people ahead from H-E-B. And then a month later, they're like, we really want to see what you're able to create. So they had me do a live video. So I had to do a live, I didn't know about recording. I actually had my husband and my daughter, I think at that time she was about 7, recording me in front of a kitchen, doing a cooking demonstration, and then about a month later, creating some content and some material. And so all of that, when I finally got the position, all made sense. And those of you that are familiar with the space of retail dietetics, it's pretty much all those things encompassed into one role. And so it was about month 5 that I got a call back, and they said, we have a last interview for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I told my husband, at that time, I was already sold to H-E-B. I said to my husband, we're going to put all our ducks into this opportunity. I love Charlotte. I loved that, I was leading a wonderful team. I was the manager of both kitchens, but I'm like, I have to take on this opportunity. So no kidding, we gathered all of our stuff that we had been living in for the last 12 years in Michigan into a U-Haul, and we drove from Michigan all the way to San Antonio in a U-Haul for my interview. No joke. I got off, they call it the Arsenal, had changed really quickly, got in for my interview, and for my interview, the U-Haul was still parked in front of this building. Long story short, I had my last interview with them. I told them that I was in Michigan, but that I had moved to Texas, And when they found out I was from the border region or the area that I grew up in, they said, we're moving you to the border. And so that was a good example of, just the rigor of the passion that they had around their program, but also about taking risks. Not everybody would, travel with all their belongings to Texas. And I just told my husband, if it doesn't happen, something will happen. We'll figure this out. And he was teaching at that time, and I'm like, we'll figure something out, but that was kind of my journey to retail dietetics. I had, was very fortunate to be one of the first 4 dietitians for that program. Now it's grown drastically. They have over 50 dietitians across the state. I also helped start up their marketing program as well. So those of you that are interested in retail dietetics, that's definitely a company to consider and look into.
And your issues there were to show value. You had to learn a whole new lingo, didn't you?
Yes, so obviously the business acumen was one kind of area that I had to quickly adapt to and really get familiar with. So when you talk about study, really getting into the books as far as business and return of investment and understanding the retail business was key to my progress and also success of the program.
Perfect example. Okay, Mary, now you're not out in the field yet. But how do you look at a subject matter that's you like and that you don't like, and how do you blend all that together to make sure you get that well-rounded picture as you move forward?
I think it's important to cover every single aspect of dietetics.
Got this on, huh? Okay.
Yay.
There you go.
And it's interesting because nowadays I'm seeing kind of a shift towards clinical, and that seems to be emphasized more than anything else, when really management and community are so important despite, maybe some lack of interest, because once you get into it and once you start looking at the foundations and everything, you realize how much you're going to need it out in the real world despite what you're doing, even if you're a clinical dietitian or if you have your private practice. And that's what we've been learning, especially in Dr. Sauer's class. I think that was one of the most vital classes I've ever had, because before that, I didn't even think I needed to be in a management class. I thought it was silly. But his class really opened my eyes and showed me how important those skills are and how well K-State does that, because I don't think any other institutions really offer that. And yeah.
Wonderful. And, there's an example, management's needed in anything you do. Those principles transcend all opportunities. So you opened your eyes to something that you didn't know that you'd like, and all of a sudden you get into it. And that's what happens when you begin to look at careers and opportunities. You open it up, and all of a sudden, gee, and there's always going to be things you don't like about something. Believe me. Excellent. All right. Anything else you want to say about your current jobs? Anything?
No, I think just, and I know that in the chapter I was with HEB and now I'm with Abbott Nutrition. I think, we've emphasized that a lot, but just how the field of dietetics is so diverse. Find what you love, and, go in it 150%, and you're not going to regret one day because you're doing what you love.
And you would agree with that.
I would agree with that.
You're living it. You're living it.
I am.
How about the future? What do you see as challenges? Challenges and opportunities in the marketplace for dietitians. What do you see? And how are you looking at the future? You've kind of indicated a little bit, but how do you look at those new opportunities? Where do you think the new things are going to be? And some of the challenges. Talk about the challenges first that we face.
Yeah, so I think some of the challenges, you've mentioned a few already as far as technology. I think it's important for us just to be aware, starting to also even explore, diving into that space as well. And just, for example, I gave, we have students that intern through a private practice that I co-own, and just, going into ChatGPT and just figuring out what is this tool that people are using. One of my dietitians, reached out to me and said, I had a patient that used the ChatGPT and, put in, I think it was something as provide me a 1,200 calorie post-bariatric menu or meal plan for the next 5 days. And it pulled it up in an instant, right? I think that there's a lot of opportunity there for us just to learn. But I think that, while it's quite scary for some of us, I think that it's going to open up a lot of opportunities. I'm really excited about the future with technology because I think it's going to help us be a lot more efficient. It's going to help us reach more people. But I also challenge each and every one of us, and even myself, that we need to still be that subject matter expert because it's still going to require validation of that human element. And I don't think that's going to go away.
I would absolutely agree with that because while AI, I said this at dinner last night as well, but it's just a computer and it won't be able to run without a person running it. So I think it's important to take advantage of that resource and use it for good rather than, using it to, write you an essay for a class. But it's good to have that as a resource to double check yourself, but also, it's still knowing when it's
Being
wrong.
aware of what's going on, absolutely critical. And read broadly, because as soon as you read outside our own discipline, you begin to see kind of what's happening. Read broadly, and that's where kind of that big picture helps. And we all know how successful printed diets are for people. They're not. So our role is absolutely critical in that.
I also want to add, we talk a lot about engagement with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I think, it could be seen as an opportunity for networking, for you to be able to connect with potential mentors, and I'm an example of that. So I think that also, just thinking through that, the challenge is that we need to be involved. I think that's definitely a challenge with the Academy, and so there's various ways that you can get involved, whether it's the dietetic practice groups or the affinity groups that Dr. Finn talked about, but even the member interest groups, if there's a specific area of focus that you're interested in, there's resources out there. They might require just a little bit of exploration, but I do encourage you to visit eatright.org and just kind of get more information on some of those ways that you can get involved. It doesn't have to be on a weekly basis, even if it's just, once a month that you're supporting a specific event or specific kind of item. I think it's going to help you grow, develop, and then also keep the momentum of our membership, which is really key as we move forward.
Mary?
I would agree with that. But also as students, we can do that as well as supporting our own communities here. I think we can get caught up in the competition of getting through classes, but we need to realize that we have to be advocates to ourselves while we're studying as well as outside in the field, because we are the reason that this field is where it is today.
Well, I must tell you, I don't think I could have done anything that I did without the Academy. It provided a support there for me, always. It was constant. It's kind of like a parent, It was there. I would call up, I'd get advice, I'd get direction, I'd get referred to people. It's that network. And I know how important it is. And so I would urge all of you, as you go out into the big world with new opportunities, and even though you may be working in another area, always keep your membership and keep your credential. It's absolutely essential to you. You do not know how that will come around. So absolutely important. Let me ask you kind of one more question. What do you think the future will hold to our opportunities? What do you think the kinds of jobs that we'll be doing? What does it look like in the future? If you could do a big picture, what would it look like?
What I would really love to see, and I think we're seeing as well, is having dietitians move more into legislation is my big picture opportunity, because that's where policy is made and changes are made. There's opportunity for funding and research and just opening more doors for dietitians. So I'd love for more dietitians to move into that space.
And you, Mary?
I'm kind of getting into it still, so I'm not sure what it's like now. But
just right now, what's it look like?
I think it would be other people being aware of who we are and our presence, because all the time, I say, oh, I'm in dietetics, and they're like, oh, what's that? And I have to kind of explain that, and they still don't understand. So I think having that understanding to the public, especially now as these nutrition issues are rising, and like Andy said, tackling it at the very root with legislature and laws that can actually make an impact, because you can only do so much as one person.
And that's perhaps where the academy comes in as well. You know, I'm struck by your comments about legislation and policy. There are a lot of physicians now in Congress, in the Senate as well as the House. There is no reason we shouldn't have some dietitians running for office. So those of you that are excited about community involvement, set your sights on something like you can do an amazing amount of help to your fellow colleagues by having an opportunity to really create an opportunity for bills and legislation.
And I love what Mary said too, even just getting involved in your community, right? You know, there's opportunity for even just at a grassroots level, you know, running for school board or running for as a commissioner, you know, like even just moving into those roles, if you don't see yourself at the White House, that there's definitely other ways that you can have an impact and influence.
So I would say that you're going to see yourself in Washington. That's
Hopefully, maybe one day.
Oh, there we are. That's her kind of broad goal at this point in time. And you're just starting out. The sky's the limit for you. There are so many places you can go. But you have an interest in that as well, and you have an interest in a variety of areas of dietetics.
I do. I just think it's such a versatile field. I think there's so much you can do with that. And we're kind of sneaky, I think, because we can fit ourselves into these like nooks and crannies of, you know, every day and just kind of fit really anywhere. We're like chameleons, kind of. So.
Well, very good. Thank you very much. We would be glad, I know we're over time, but if you have a question, we've got two panel members up here who would be happy to take it. Are any of you too shy to ask a question? No, you're not too shy to ask a question. Any questions of these two experts here? Well, there's a brave soul. Yes.
My question is, as like the dietetics world evolves, like, we can always find a place for ourselves. How would you go about like? My question is about like as the dietetics world evolves, like how would you present yourself to a new opportunity that's never had a dietetic professional before? Like how do you go about preparing yourself? Would you say?
So one thing that helped me, I mentioned helping to start up the nutrition program at HEB as a retail dietitian, and what really helped me was a business proposal. Again, it seems so silly, but I think if you have a plan in place to be able to justify your worth, how you're able to add value to that organization, and metrics, or what is it called, KPIs, that is definitely one way that you could show your value in any organization. So that's how I would personally kind of structure that or format that to really help show your value.
Do you have a suggestion of what you might do? Your thoughts?
I mean, again, I think Maddie knows more than I do at this point. She's already in her internship. But I do like what you said, Andy, because, and again, I just keep going back to Dr. Sauer's class because he covered that specific thing. And just the fact that it's reiterated here that it is so vital to know how to do that and to show your worth on your own and really without being prompted is really important.
I can tell you that I had that experience, having been a person hired and they didn't know what to do, and they have a job description that didn't resemble anything like I thought it might. And you kind of study it and you kind of find your way. You try to find out what the needs are of that organization, and you kind of try to supply them something immediately that they want. And then it kind of builds from there. That is my suggestion, because ultimately any job is what you make of it. You create it, and it's going to be a lot of who you are. And therefore, the expectation of the next person that comes in that job will be based on what you do. So you got to add you to the job, for sure. Well, let's give our two panelists